former CBO director. He is the president of American Action Forum, Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Doug, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. What's your reaction to these jobless claims and the assessment right now of the labor market?
I mean, the labor market is red hot. That's an historically low initial claims number, no question about it. And we have seen other indicators of a red hot labor market. You know, people are quitting at record rates. Why? There are 1.7 jobs for everybody looking for a job. The gap between actual employment and listed openings is 5 million bigger than the labor force. So there is no question that there's just a huge competition for labor out there. The thing I'd remember is that this is the flip side of the same coin that gave us the inflation. The only way to get the 6 percentage point increase in CPI inflation was to overstimulate the economy. Shows up in the job market as these kinds of numbers, but it's showing up every day as, you know, year over year 25% increases in energy prices, year over year 8.4% increases in the core food, energy, and shelter that people have to spend. So that we're seeing the inflation show real legs because we're seeing the labor market stay this tight.
But put this in context, Doug. I mean, you've got a very strong jobs market, but you've also got inflation ripping across the country. 40-year highs on inflation, gasoline prices ripping as well. The Federal Reserve doing a string of rate hikes. We're expecting the next one to be 50 basis points, and that is expected to slow down an economy that was running strongly. But now some people are talking about the possibility of a recession. So how does this jive? Strong job market, but a conversation about a recession.
Certainly the administration wants to have you believe that you can have a labor market stay this strong and get rid of the inflation. That's not going to happen. Once you have inflation at this magnitude, the only way to bring it down is for the Fed to intervene and slow down demand, which is going to slow down the demand for labor. It's going to soften this labor market. The question is, how long will this take? Right now, the gap between real interest rates and the inflation rate is as wide as it has been since the early 1970s, and that inflation took about a decade to bring out of the economy. You can get it out faster if you move more aggressively.
Wow.
So, you know, a lot of 50 basis point hikes. But that raises the risk of a recession. You know,
yeah, but
that's the position the Fed is in.
Then there's the other story to discuss, and that's all this wild spending. President Biden unveiled a massive budget the other day. $5.8 trillion budget proposal for fiscal 2023. It includes $813 billion for defense spending, $32 billion to fight crime, they say, and $10 billion for election administration, Douglas. I am struck by the fact that there is an increase in spending at the IRS proposed of 20%, and yet the increase in defense spending is 4%. Can you walk us through this budget and assess it for us?
Well, this is a budget that's really detached from reality in several ways. I mean, if you look underneath the hood, the economic forecast is completely at odds with what you're seeing out there. They expect inflation to go back to 2.3% next year and stay there as far as the eye can see. That is simply not going to happen. They expect real growth to remain very, very strong. The Fed's job is to actually slow down the economy. So this is built on a very rosy scenario. It's not tied to political reality either. They're claiming they're going to cut deficits and be fiscal hawks, but the things they're using to do it are big tax increases that are simply not going to go through Congress. Most of the things, like a 28% corporate rate, have already gotten a firm no out of the Senate. So don't believe any of what you hear about the deficit reduction. What they intend to do is spend. And that's at odds with the budgetary reality that we have a spending problem already. We started with the American Rescue Plan. They tried again with Build Back Better. They're continuing with this budget. The reality, as you know very well, is that if you look at the current federal budget, spending exceeds revenue as far as the eye can see, and the debt piles up as a result. So the real recipe here is to get spending growth under control, not to turn it loose in an indiscriminate fashion.
So how is it possible that this doesn't come up yesterday when oil executives testified before House lawmakers and the administration is blaming the oil companies for sky-high gasoline? No, I mean, I'm serious. I'm looking at the budget right now, and they are projecting a real GDP growth for 2022 of 3.8%. You're right. What is this? Pie in the sky numbers? We've been saying umpteen times there are people expecting 2 quarters of negative growth. That's a recession. And many expecting very low growth of just 1%. They are modeling a 3.8% real GDP, and instead of coming out and saying, okay, we want to pull in the spending, he comes out with a $5.8 trillion budget and blames the oil companies for inflation.
They have been trying to change the subject on inflation just for over a year now, right? First it was, oh, this is global supply chains, it's not us. Everybody has this problem. Europe has a 4 percentage point increase in their inflation rate. We got well over 6, almost 7. That's this U.S. spending problem showing up. They blamed every big company, market concentration, they're all doing this. That's at odds with the facts on the ground. There hasn't been a big increase in concentration. Now they want to blame it on big oil because oil prices are high. And the reality is they haven't done anything either. There is no case in the facts here. This is all finger pointing to try to change the subject from the fact that they created this inflation and they own the responsibility for fixing it.
And yet they keep on. Here's a bit of the oil executives testifying yesterday before House lawmakers. Watch this.
We really need to have some dialogue, and that's what we've been asking for is dialogue.
The Interior Department should end its pause on federal oil and gas leasing, especially in the Gulf of Mexico, which is among the lowest greenhouse gas intensive productions in the world.
Even before the invasion of Ukraine, as the world emerged from the pandemic, we were seeing a growing imbalance in global oil and gas markets. The invasion has further demonstrated how quickly and dramatically markets can be disrupted and how that impacts the everyday lives of Americans.
I also want to be very clear about where Chevron stands. We do not control the market price of crude oil or natural gas, nor of refined products like gasoline and diesel fuel. And we have no tolerance for price gouging.
So, Douglas, pretty much Democrat lawmakers just blew them off, saying, yeah. Why don't you change your buybacks? Why don't you stop paying dividends? Your thoughts on who's to blame for the price of oil?
The price of oil is set in global markets. It's plain and simple. It's not U.S. oil companies. It's the big imbalance between a world economy that's growing more rapidly as it comes out of the pandemic, and the fact that for a couple of years, everybody in the oil business lost money, and so they didn't drill new wells. They're not eager to incur further losses, so they're being careful on their costs. That's the situation. It can be rectified over time, but you have to have an environment that says, hey, go ahead and explore, go ahead and drill, go ahead and produce. That hasn't been the rhetoric coming out of this administration. Because of their climate goals, they've been put in this position of saying ridiculous things like, well, it's okay if we get more oil from Canada. That's not going to harm the environment, but we can't produce any domestically. That makes no sense. So they're walking around the globe hat in hand asking other people to produce when the largest producer of oil and gas is the United States, and they should simply let the market do its job.
Yeah. All right. Doug, do you think his budget gets through?
Oh, no. This was, dead on arrival for sure, probably dead before it was printed.
Okay.
It's just not realistic.
All right. Doug, thanks very much for weighing in on all of that. We so appreciate it. Good to see you this morning, by the way. Douglas Holtz-Eakin joining us.